Hi everyone, Sharon here. Today I want to respond to the question, when do you call yourself an artist? This is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially if they don't have a fine arts degree. Well, let me just start out by saying you don't need a fine arts degree in order to call yourself an artist. I do not have a Bachelor of Fine Arts, a BFA. I do not. My degree is in nursing, all science. So I didn't take up painting until I was forced out of my career due to disability, which I'm not going to get into now. But basically, I do have a problem with this ankylosing spondylitis, which is the disease I have. It's an autoimmune disease, and it creates a great deal of pain. So in order to find something to do with myself, to distract myself, I started out as a jeweler, and I was making jewelry. I started to make jewelry when I was in high school. I had a jewelry and metals class that, where you're pouring the molten gold or silver into the mold, and you're actually making the jewelry. I also have done beading and that kind of thing too, as well as wire work. So I did that for a few years, and it was fine, but my sole purpose for doing it was to make money. It wasn't for pure enjoyment. Then one day I decided to do a 30-day journal with an artist on YouTube that I knew. And anyway, I went ahead and did that, and I realized how much I love painting. And that's when I got into it. That was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I began painting every single day, taking classes. I took classes privately through another artist, an award-winning artist. I read books. I did online classes, all sorts of things in order to learn and to teach myself the art of painting. So anyway, recently somebody on YouTube that I commented on one of his videos. He's a sketch artist, very well known. And somewhat snobby, I found out, because he made a nasty comment about my artwork, which I thought was so rude, because all of our artwork is different, and it hurt, it really hurt, but I'm not going to let it get me down. I continue to do my artwork. I just did this oil painting today, and I wanted to go over the different types of artists. So basically, you can call yourself an artist at any time. Most people start out saying, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm just learning how to paint. But it comes from here. What is your desire? Is it in your soul, in your spirit, in your gut that you just have to paint all the time? I've been out to parties or to family functions or whatever, and in the back of my head I'm thinking, gosh, I really wish I was home painting right now, because that's what I prefer to do. That is when you call yourself an artist, when the desire is so great that you just have to be with it. You don't have to be super great or award-winning in order to call yourself an artist, or have a degree in order to call yourself an artist. You are an artist when that desire fills you up so much it becomes the primary thing that you just love and want to do. You don't have to be selling work in order to be an artist. Then there are different types of artists. There are graphic artists, there's illustrators. Graphic artists need a degree. Illustrators usually need a degree, but sometimes they do not. There are many illustrators out there that will illustrate books, for instance, and that kind of thing, and they don't need a degree in order to do that. They just need to be asked by the author in order to do the work. And then there are visual artists versus fine artists. Now I'm going to read you something. I call myself a fine artist, and there's a reason for that. It's not because I'm an award-winning artist. I haven't entered any big contests or plenary events or anything like that in order to be judged, because I just am not confident enough yet in order to do that. But let me read something to you about fine art versus visual art, because this person went off on me for calling myself a fine artist. And secondly, I also want to say that the artwork that I'm producing on my YouTube page is in order to help people learn. It's not my full artwork. There are a couple paintings I did, the one of my dog. There's another couple pastel paintings that I did that are my work, but you'd have to go to my website to see things like this that I painted behind me and that I sell. So anyway, let me go on to explain the difference. Here it says, this is off of a blog. It's called Art Prof, P-R-O-F. It's by Clara Liu, L-I-E-U. She's a visual artist and adjunct professor, okay? So she knows what she's talking about. She says here, what's the difference between fine arts and visual arts? Are they different? And in what category do you belong? Fine art is creative art, especially visual art, whose products are to be appreciated primarily or solely for their imaginative, aesthetic, or intellectual content. Visual art are forms that create works that are primarily visual in nature. Now, when do you separate these two? One common point of view is that the original motivation for making the artwork is what distinguishes us from visual versus fine artists. Visual artists are usually making art in order to either please a customer or to make money off of it. Now, I do both. So I do visual art and I just do fine art. But visual art would be like, for instance, right now I'm working on a cat painting, which is somewhere around here, for a client of mine. And that is something that she requested of me after seeing my pet portrait and wanted me to paint her cat. So I'm working on that. It is not the art that I would have chosen to do, but she commissioned me to do the work. So that would be visual art. I'm doing it for the sole purpose of pleasing the client. Then there are fine artists who make visual art, like paintings, sculptures, that are solely there for aesthetic purposes, for viewing, basically. But fine art does it for themselves. The work is because they need it, that it's like their food, it fuels their soul. And so this person goes on to say, the sole motivation for making paintings was essentially to please a client, like I was saying, and then it was controlled and determined by what the client desired to see. So that would be visual art. But fine art are works that are made because you're driven by an inner desire to do so. That's why I call myself a fine artist, okay? Just so you understand that. It's not about the type of work. Everybody's work is different. Some are abstract, some are sketches, some are oil, some are pastel at different levels. Landscapes versus abstract versus impressionist, like this one behind me is more impressionistic. But anyway, those are the differences. So I just wanted to explain that to you. I'm just going to look down here and see if there's anything else. She goes on to say that she's not a fan of categories, that she especially doesn't like the act of categorizing specific works of art because people are so eager to put labels on artists. So she decided that she did not like that. Then she goes on that she says, for example, some artists are labeled as an illustrator, whereas others are labeled as a fine artist, when really there's so much blurring between the two labels. What's the difference between a fine artist who communicates narrative themes and an illustrator who creates self-initiated works? Two artists who I think have a lot in common in terms of their visual styles and content are Marshall Arisman and Francis Bacon. These are two artists she's discussing here. But they have very stylistic similarities, and one calls himself an illustrator and the other one calls himself a fine artist. So there are fine lines, but I just wanted to tell you that being a visual artist, a fine artist, an illustrator, whatever you want to call yourself, as long as that desire is in your soul to continue making works of art, then you are an artist. So don't be afraid to call yourself an artist. I think many people, when they're first starting out, say, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm not an artist, I'm just learning, I'm not an artist, I'm a student, I'm not an artist. And it goes on and on and on, millions of times. Now you need to call yourself an artist and say it just as many times as you said you weren't an artist in order to even them out and get your brain in tune with calling yourself an artist. So that's all I wanted to say today. Everybody have a terrific day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.